Hello everyone, welcome back to week 12 of our power rankings. We're doing another power ranking week as we've seen some shift in the top 10 that sees a new team enter the top 10 and some surprising honorable mentions. We'll get to all that coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the NTN Hockey channel. Now before we begin this video, don't forget to like this video and subscribe below. Thank all your support whenever to all of you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget the subscribe button and don't forget to comment down in the comment section below so you can also discuss today's video. We're on the road to 500 subscribers, so if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button down below. So in this video, we got another power rankings video. We got some more interesting shifts in the top 10. We have another 4 honorable mentions. Now a lot of teams were able to win 3 games this week. So we have a couple of surprising teams hit the honorable mention lists. So we'll start with our 4 honorable mentions as we usually do. So first, as our 4th honorable mention to start the 2025 portion of the 2024-2025 season off, we have the Detroit Red Wings. Now Red Wings are not an overly great team, but they've been on a little bit of a hot streak since Todd McLellan became head coach of the Detroit Red Wings. I think they're on like a 4-game winning streak and won 3 games last week. They beat the Winnipeg Jets, they beat the Pittsburgh Penguins, and they had another win in there as well. So a couple of impressive victories. They beat the Jackets as well. So Jackets, Penguins, not overly great teams, but in wildcard races, while the Jets are the best team in the Central Division. So to see them beat the Jets was quite fantastic. The wins over Pittsburgh and Columbus are also pretty good. So the Red Wings are finding some ways to score goals recently, and they're getting some wins. They're up to 17, 18, and 4. So it's not an overly fantastic record, still below 500, but they've at least gotten themselves back in the playoff race. I think they're only like 2 or 3 points back of a playoff spot. So Red Wings are looking fantastic right now. The addition of McLellan seems to be helping that Red Wings team a lot. Offensively, Raymond is having himself a heck of a season, and he's had a really good week. Larkin's had a pretty good week, so is Kane, Comfort, Casper. They're all doing really good offensively. Defensively, Sider, Edvinson, Sherratt, and Petrie to some extent have also been really good defensively. And Annette, Lyon, Talbot, they've been giving themselves some solid goaltending. So all in all, the Red Wings look like a solid team. And even though they're not where I think they need to be to make the playoffs right now, and even though they're still below 500, a 3-win week has them as my 4th honorable mention. My 3rd honorable mention this week is the Montreal Canadiens. After putting the Canadiens in my top 10 at the first week of the power rankings, I didn't think the Canadiens would be able to make it even into my honorable mentions, but they've now made it onto my honorable mentions a couple of times over the past couple of weeks, and this time they're going to be my 3rd honorable mention. This week they went 3-1-0. They had an embarrassing loss to the Chicago Blackhawks, but after that, they had a couple of really impressive wins. They beat the Golden Knights to end their winning streak, they beat the Avalanche to end their winning streak, and they beat the hurting Vancouver Canucks right now. So the 3 wins against playoff caliber teams in the Western Conference, very fantastic stuff there from the Canadiens, who are playing on a really high level right now. Offensively, Caulfield, Suzuki, Doc, Lyonnais, Heineman, like they're all looking really good offensively. Defensively, Hudson is having himself a rookie season. And on top of that, Matheson, Goulet, like that defense is starting to blossom into something really cool. And then in net, Montembeault and Dobes are looking fantastic. So the Habs have been on a real heater last couple of weeks, and I had them as my 3rd honorable mention. My 2nd honorable mention is a team who also won 3 games this week, and that was the Colorado Avalanche. Their one lone loss this week was that show loss to the Habs, as we just talked about, but besides that, they had a couple of interesting wins. They beat the Winnipeg Jets, they also beat the Florida Panthers, and they had another win in there as well. So got 3 out of a possible 4 wins, got 7 out of a possible 8 points. The Avalanche are looking lethal. They're up to 25-15-1 after starting out 0-4-0 to start the season. They're 25-11-1. That team is looking lethal right now. They've gotten themselves back up into 3rd in the Central Division, so watch out. Dallas, Colorado is coming, and they are looking lethal offensively. Randon McKinnon leading that offensive force are looking lethal, and looked lethal again last week. Well, Nichushkin, Colton, and a couple of other guys are looking really good offensively. Defensively, you have a solid top 4 of Taves, McCarr, Manson, Gerard, and they're holding the fort down defensively. And in net, the addition of Blackwood has been phenomenal for that team. And even though Wedgwood went down with an injury, I think last week or the week before, he's still been looking pretty good as a backup. So all in all, Avalanche are looking really good. And that was my 2nd honorable mention. And my 1st honorable mention is a team who was in my top 10 for quite some time, but is going to fall out of my top 10 for the time being. And that's the Florida Panthers. The Panthers did not have an overly great week last week, going 1-2-0. They lost to Carolina Hurricanes in narrow fashion. They lost to Colorado Avalanche in narrow fashion, and won in a shootout over the Pittsburgh Penguins. So it wasn't an overly overly great week there for the Panthers, and they sort of lost ground to the Maple Leafs for the Atlantic Division lead. So it was definitely not an overly great week there for the Florida Panthers, but still, they're a decent team and a team who's still going to be around my top 10 for still a while. So even though they had a losing record this week, I'm not going to bump them down too much. Like, still offensively, even though they had a bad week, Kachuk, Barkov, Verhaeghe, Lundell, like, they're all looking good offensively. Defensively, could maybe tighten up a little bit, but Ekblad, Forsling, Mikulov, they're all looking pretty good defensively. And Annette, Bobrovsky, and Knight have not looked too badly this week. So all in all, Panthers are still a solid team, but I'm going to put them out of my top 10 into my first honorable mention. So now going over to my top 10 teams. The 10th team is a team who is finally going to make their debut, I think, in the top 10. I don't think I put them in my top 10 yet. I've had those in my honorable mention a couple of times, but not in my top 10. And that's the Edmonton Oilers. The Oilers have had a fantastic week this week, going 3-0-0. They beat the Anaheim Ducks, they beat the Seattle Kraken, and they beat the Utah Hockey Club. None of these teams are overly fantastic, but they're all trying to stay alive in the playoff race. So wins for Edmonton against those three teams are really good. They're keeping pace with the Kings for second in the Pacific Division right now. So that Oilers team is still looking lethal. And like I said, this past week they scored 4 goals in each of those games. So that's a really good sign there for the Oilers. Like offensively, Nugent Hopkins, Hyman, McDavid, Draisaitl, Henrique, amongst others, are looking really good offensively. Defensively, Bouchard, Ekholm, and Nurse, amongst others, are looking really good defensively. And Annette, Skinner, and Picard have actually done pretty well this week. So all in all, Oilers have had a pretty good week, going 3-0, and made their debut as number 10 team this week in my power rankings. The number 9 team in my power rankings is the New Jersey Devils. They had a pretty sour week this week. Started the week off with a loss to the Anaheim Ducks on the second half of a back-to-back loss to the Los Angeles Kings. Then they got a narrow loss to the San Jose Sharks before they ended their losing streak and beat the Seattle Kraken. So a very bad week there for the Devils, which is why I'm dropping them a little bit. They've lost some ground in the Metro Division to the Washington Capitals. The Carolina Hurricanes are not too far behind them now. So all in all, bad stuff there for the Devils. They lost some ground, but they're still one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference, one of the top teams in the league. Offensively, Jack Hughes, Andre Palat, Timo Meier, Nico Hischier all had pretty good weeks. Defensively, Hamilton, Hughes, Siegenthaler have been doing pretty good over this past couple of weeks. And Annette Markstrom, he had a fantastic game yesterday against Seattle to get them that win. And Allen's actually looked pretty good too. So all in all, Devils are still a lethal team. They're still doing good, but because of the California road trip that produced no points, I do drop them to number 9. At number 8, we do have another Pacific Division team here in the Los Angeles Kings. Kings had another pretty good week last week, went 2-0-0, beat the New Jersey Devils, shut them out, and then when they beat the Tampa Bay Lightning. So only 2 games this week, but 2 really good teams. The Devils, like we said, top 3 in the Metro. Bolts fighting with Boston for a top 3 spot in the Atlantic right now. So all in all, some pretty good weeks there for the Kings to beat 2 really good Eastern Conference teams, and I don't really see why I would bump them from my top 10. Offensively, Kopitar, Kempe, Byfield, Fiala, Thomas, like that offense is looking lethal. Defensively with Gavrikov, Anderson, Clark, they're looking really good. Only letting 1 goal in those 2 games, so defensively they're looking fantastic. And Annette, Kemper, as well as Riddick are doing great. So all in all, Kings are looking fantastic, and I have them as my 8th team in my power rankings. The 7th team in my power rankings is the Dallas Stars. Stars this past week went 3-0-0 to go up to a 24-13-1 record. So Dallas was looking pretty good. They wound up beating Utah in overtime 3-2, as well as beating the Ottawa Senators and the Buffalo Sabres, doubling both of them up 4-2. So really good, impressive wins against 2 of the Atlantic Division teams. And then they got an overtime win against the Utah team, which always seems to play Dallas hard. So all in all, a pretty good week for Dallas. Not going to bump them up or high too much, but I think the 7th spot's a pretty good spot there for Dallas. Like I said, offensively, Johnston, Stankoven, Ben, Marchment have all had pretty good weeks offensively. Defensively, Heiskanen, Dumba, Leah Bushkin have all been pretty good defensively, and the Nets, Andre and DeSmith have been pretty good. So all in all, Dallas is a pretty solid team. Went 3-0 last week, and I had them as my 7th team in the power rankings. 6th team in the power rankings is the Carolina Hurricanes. Hurricanes had a pretty good week last week, going 2-1-1. They beat the Pittsburgh Penguins. They beat the Florida Panthers. They lost to Minnesota, and then they had an overtime loss to Columbus. So the OT loss against Columbus wasn't overly great, but Minnesota's a really good team, and then they were able to take down both the Panthers and the Penguins. So it was a pretty good week for the Carolina Hurricanes, going 2-1-1 to improve their record to 24-14-2, and that's why I had them as the 6th team in the power rankings. Like offensively, Svechnikov, Aho, Jarvis, Natchez, Martinook, all looking good offensively this week. Defensively, we've got Orlov, Burns, Slavin, Chatfield, like they're all looking good defensively. And in net, Kochetkov and Tokarski are still looking pretty good, even though they're not the greatest of goaltenders. So all in all, Carolina's had a pretty good week, and I have them as my fixed team. Fifth team in my power rankings is the Winnipeg Jets. Jets did not have an overly great week this week, going 0-2-1. Like we said, they lost to the Montreal Canadiens, they lost to the Colorado Avalanche, and they had narrow overtime loss to the Anaheim Ducks. So not overly great week there for the Jets, but they are still one of the top teams in the NHL, the top team in the Central Division. So I'm not going to run them down too much because they are still one of the lethal teams, which is why I have them as my fifth team. But they did have a pretty bad week. Losing to Anaheim and Montreal is not overly great. So because of those two losses, I do bump them down. But still, offensively, Shafley, Connor, Velarde are looking lethal, and Ehlers, Niederreiter, Lowry also looking pretty good offensively this week. Defensively, could probably tighten up a little bit, but Pionk, Morrissey, DeMello are also looking pretty good defensively. And in net, even though they didn't have the greatest of week, Hellebuyck and Conroy are still looking pretty good. So all in all, Jets are still a solid team. Had a really bad week, so I'm going to move them down to number 5. At number 4, we have the Toronto Maple Leafs. They had a fantastic week, going 4-0-0. They beat the New York Islanders. They beat the New York Islanders again. They beat the Boston Bruins, and they beat the Philadelphia Flyers. So not overly great teams, but they had 4 games and won all 4 games. The only team this week to win 4 out of the 4 games they played. So it was a really fantastic week there for the Leafs. They got Austin Matthews back, which is really good. That's a big boost to their offense, but getting 8 out of 8 points has put them 4 points ahead of the Panthers for the top spot in the Atlantic Division. So Toronto is looking really good at the halfway point for them. They now have a record of 26-13-2. So all in all, Leafs are looking pretty good. They're looking like a lethal, dangerous team. They think a lot of teams would be scared to face right now. Like offensively, now with Matthews back, Nyes looked really great this past week, as well as Tavares, Marner, Nylander. Like they're all looking really good offensively. Defensively, not the greatest of weeks, but still McCabe, Riley, Tanev, Oliver Ekman-Larsson also looking pretty good. And in net, Wool and Hildeby actually looked pretty good with Stolarz out right now. So all in all, Leafs have had a pretty good week, and I have them as my 4th team in my power rankings. 3rd team in my power rankings is the Vegas Golden Knights. They didn't do overly great this week, going 2-0. We talked about them losing to the Montreal Canadiens. They also beat the Buffalo Sabres and the Philadelphia Flyers. So not overly flashy games and not overly fantastic wins against really great teams, but they keep on going. They only had 2 regulation losses in the entire month of December, and to start January off with 2 wins. They're one of the best teams in the NHL, the top team in the Pacific Division, and by a little bit of points. So all in all, the Knights are still looking like one of the heavyweights and one of the cup favorites in the NHL, and that's why I had them as 3rd in my power rankings this week. Like offensively, Barbashev, Eichel, Stone, Pearson, Roy, Carlson, they've all looked pretty good offensively. Defensively, Hanifin, Pietrangelo, Theodore, Haig, Whitecloud, like that defense core is looking great. And in net, even though they weren't perfect, Hill and Samsonov actually did pretty good this past week. So all in all, a pretty good week there for the Knights, going 2-0, and I have them as 3rd in my power rankings. 2nd in my power rankings is the Minnesota Wild. Another solid week for them, going 3-0-0. They wound up being the Nashville Predators, took down the Washington Capitals in a shootout, but they also beat the Carolina Hurricanes. So winning against a couple of elite level Metro Division teams was really good. And then they also beat the Nashville Predators. So getting 6 out of a possible 6 points is really good for the Wild, and are able to keep climbing that Central Division, closing on the Winnipeg Jets. So the Wild have a pretty good week, which is why I'm putting them as my 2nd team in my power rankings. Like offensively, Kaprizov, even though he's out, the team has been able to pick up the slack, like Eriksson Ek, Goudreau, Johansson, Boldy, like all those guys offensively are looking really good for Minnesota. Defensively, Brodin, Faber, Bogosian have looked really good, solid defensively, and in net, Gustafsson and Fleury have given them some solid goaltending. So all in all, really good stuff there for the Wild, and I have them as my 2nd power ranking team. And the top team in my power rankings this week is another Metro Division team who seems to always be in the top end of my power rankings, and that's the Washington Capitals. Capitals went 2-0-2 this past week. They lost in a shootout to Minnesota. They also lost in a shootout to Buffalo, but they also beat the Boston Bruins and the New York Rangers. So a couple of impressive wins, a couple of narrow shootout losses. Got 6 out of a possible 8 points this week, which is fantastic. Not as good as some of these other teams did this week, but still one of the top teams. They're the top team in the Metro Division. If I'm correct, the top team in the Eastern Conference, and they're not too far from being the top team in the league. Like offensively, Ovechkin's back. He's looking fantastic. I think he's only like 23 goals away from Gretzky's record. Strome's looking good. Mangiapane, Radish, all these guys are looking really good offensively. Defensively, you have Carlson, Chychrun, Trevor Van Riemsdyk. They're all looking pretty good, so really good stuff there on the defensive end. And in net, Lindgren and Thompson are looking phenomenal. So all in all, the Capitals have been a solid NHL team this week, going 2-0-2. They remain one of the top top teams in the NHL, and for this week, they're going to be my number 1 team in the power rankings. So all in all, a pretty good week this week for my power rankings, but just to recap here, at number 10, we had the Edmonton Oilers. Number 9, we had the New Jersey Devils. Number 8, the LA Kings. Number 7, the Dallas Stars. Number 6, the Carolina Hurricanes. 5 was the Winnipeg Jets. 4 is the Toronto Maple Leafs. 3, the Vegas Golden Knights. 2, the Minnesota Wild, and number 1 team but in the power rankings this week, the Washington Capitals. Definitely. After you guys' thoughts on my power rankings down in the comment section below. Do you think I put anyone too high? Do you think I put anyone too low? What would you have changed if you had the power rankings as of this week? And I'd love to hear your opinion on your power rankings down in the comment section below. So I'm going to talk for today. Until this video, if you'd like to subscribe below. Thank you for all your support. We'll never be able to without you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget the subscribe button down below. Don't forget to comment down in the comment section below so you can discuss today's video. Also a blog to make news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that. So check that out. I'll link down in the description below. And catch you guys all for the next video. See you guys soon.